approach the end of the age, a time when all will be revealed.
I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna raise you. I'm gonna slay you.
Welcome to the Zeph Report. How are you? Step right on in and find a clue. Greetings in the name of the Most High. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the birthday wishes. I know we had the anniversary, and then I had those good wishes, and then nice vibes and nice prayers and nice spirit vibes from people on birthday. Yeah, it's a kind of a milestone in that, my celebration is just like I've got the window open and I'm seeing a beautiful view of nature, because that's all we have here. But I'm very appreciative of that, and very appreciative to be here. I was considering a philosophical premise earlier about whether or not being alive is okay, because someone sent me a book called The Conspiracy Against the Human Race by Thomas Ligotti. I believe that's the name. What happened to my book? Where's my book? Here it is. Thomas Ligotti. Exactly. Thomas Ligotti. And it's a kind of a book that verges on horror, but it's talking in a sense and cross-referencing references about life being not okay to be alive, and considering all the horrors of life and all the how people feel in general. And if people are really honest, they would say, no, life is not okay. Being alive is not okay. And then I thought about how I looked at, I had, some things that I was looking at. I was looking at a Rush concert called Clockwork Angels from about 3-4 years ago, 3 years ago. Time flies. And they were great, and it was awesome, and, it was like a favorite of mine for a long time. And, it didn't do it for me. I mean, there wasn't that, then I saw Jeff Beck, and that was like another, great icon, especially when he went fusion back in the mid-'70s with Jan Hammer and different things, and then that didn't do it. And then I saw some other, iconography of my own from the past, and then in music, and then I flipped to the debates, and it was like I'd rather watch paint dry, and things are not hitting. I reached a kind of a threshold in mixing, and kind of got into the got the respect of people that I really trust and who've helped me and helped me along the last 3-4 years to get to that point. And then then our mixes are kind of reaching parity, so I was kind of like got that nod and acceptance, but it was like it was nothing. There was nothing there. And it's weird. It's like there's this. Then I thought, well, what's going on? Because I remember back in the past, I would covet. I would get all these things for writing, and someone liked a screenplay, I get all excited, and people like. I never really got excited if people liked my music or not. It didn't really do it for me. If they didn't, it didn't. That's okay, but it didn't really, do it for me on. Social networks and stuff, there wasn't that. Then I would listen back to play back on things that I couldn't do, that I can do now, and arrangements I've made that are very interesting and whatnot, and very unusual, and again not something that I had the skill to do before, and that didn't do it for me. So there's nothing in that world, whether it be. No, I like it when you share and people like it. It means something to them. If they take away something from it, like a podcast, and they get something out of it, if they get something out of the music being extreme alternative, what I do is extremely alternative and pretty much, attacking the system whenever possible, So it's got, a built-in audience in that regard, and people are going to like certain things, but I'm always, trying to get away from this idea of people liking something to justify or to make it okay to be alive. You know what I mean? Because that can't do it. And then I realized I didn't really care what people thought, but, and as I started getting more and more out of my way and more crazy with sounds and stuff, as I reached a certain threshold with the mixing where I don't care anymore, I'll deconstruct them. You know what I mean? It started going that way. And I was like, well, what's going on here? Because before I used to covet the way that, my friend Rob, the Grammy winner, he would turn the knobs, he would do this, he would do that, and there was all this preciousness going on about different people and different songs, and can you ever get to that level, and what about these people, and then what about that music that I really love, and those people that are playing, and, concerts I'd like to see, and, that's that world. And then what about travel, and what about this, and what about that, and what about anything that, all this stuff used to be, I guess I used to use all this stuff to get away from the question of, is it okay to be alive? All these external, like, achievements or material objects or different, nonsensical things that looking back make no sense, but at the time were very instrumental in getting me through a certain period of time or a certain thing. Or, I went to the trouble of getting the concert tickets, let's say, to Rush and seeing them performing, the Moving Pictures record and at the LA Forum, and that was somehow important, and it's so ridiculous. And now it's not that I'm numb, to everything. It's not that at all. I'm very sensitive to a lot of things, but something changed regarding this, whether it's okay to be alive or not. And this also included the literary world, because I was in the literary world for a long time, novels and screenplays, and an avid reader at the same time, and also a poet forever. Always been a poet, always been a lyricist. People used to come out of the woodwork to get me to write their lyrics, when I wasn't really playing that much. I was playing drums, but I mean, bands and stuff, they always wanted me to write their lyrics. So that always, involved, and it was always so, that would get me through, and I'd write another, bit of poetry and fill up a journal, and that would get me through. And then, then there was like, I was looking really good tan, and I was surfing, and I kind of got myself really in shape, and I was really, barreling, and that, but all these little things were helping me to, and all these bits of life of, living in different places and living all over Los Angeles and living in Malibu and living down in San Diego and living in the, here, and then going to this event or that event and this ritual and that ritual and whatever else. And, each thing that would occur, and I mean, this is probably because of the milestone of hitting 62. Oh my God. And realizing that all my life I have avoided the question, or not avoided it, I've grappled with the question, is it okay to be alive? And of course I've come up with a conclusion early in life that no, it's not okay, but that I must keep searching or keep, externalizing my existence so that I could get through another moment, you know what I mean? So I could just get, and so that I would attach myself to, oh, this is really cool, or I like that, or I like this, just like a baby with a mobile in a crib. And, there's the object, and, oh, look at that, and then, of course, I noticed that all that had fallen away. In other words, those things that used to get me through don't get me through at all, I'd like really enjoy watching Rush, and I would talk to a friend, and wow, that was cool. We go over it, about how great they were, and realizing we're not worthy, we'll never be that good. And all that stuff we go through, all the machinations, or, reading a screenplay by Oliver Stone and go, God, that was his first script? Jeez, I'll never, there was that kind of stuff of being outshined and then trying to come up. And of course, it's all ridiculous. And I sort of held on But then I realize what has happened. That question, is it okay to be alive? That humanity avoids, because every single person knows the answer to that question, but nobody wants to know. They keep moving and moving and grabbing on and grabbing on. Desire propels them, to not kill themselves, of course, but to live through experiences and through objects and through the material world in some way, trying to justify that which should not exist in us. And it's a curious phenomenon. I mean, if you want to be really cool in philosophy school, you have a kind of a nihilistic attitude, and you get real intellectual with things and that. Anyway, look, so I'm reading along in Thomas Ligotti, very nice book, a lot of challenging ideas, and I haven't been challenged like that in years, so I was very, very happy to have the challenge. But then all of a sudden I realized, wait a second, that's been answered in my life. In other words, the question was removed by Christ, by my faith in the Lord. There is no question like that. And the change that I went through was to prove that it had been removed. In other words, is it okay to be alive? Well, it's irrelevant if you're in Christ, because you've already died, in a sense. You've died and you've gone elsewhere. It's not about you now. It's about him, and you're there, but you're not there to have a question like that on you as if you're the human race. You're no longer like the human race. And then the proof of it all is how we fall away from our rituals. We don't need them. Like if I create out of my heart to create. I don't need, whatever your reaction is, it's okay. It doesn't really matter. If people have been repulsed and enthralled by me for years and years, both extremes. And then the same people that were repulsed once, they're enthralled once, then they become repulsed later, and they say you've lost it, then they come back and they're enthralled again. So that shows that I have been at least free, right, without worrying too much. And then, of course, lately the challenge has been, well, if this is my true state, that the question of is it okay to be alive has been removed by my faith in Lord, by what he did to me, via my free will, which is not reversible, actually. And then, so it's no surprise that the things of the world, the concerts, the music you like, the this, the that, whatever, the rituals, the going to the party at the certain kind of restaurant and having a certain kind of food and having a certain kind of drink or having whatever, getting there in a certain kind of transportation or whatever it is. All those things, fall away as kind of like irrelevant, because they're not being used to pull you through, or if you will, away from the question that you've been running not to answer. So then the whole rat race is all about getting away from that question, right? All the rituals we do and all the appointments we make and all the irrelevant things we do are all a way of dealing with that question, and all the yearning. In Buddhism, the main idea there is that suffering is caused by desire, and all life is suffering. That's the main. If you know that, you know a lot about Buddhism, or what Buddhism is trying to address. In a way that Hinduism addresses the same thing, was not as effective, and Buddhism, really goes at it. There's a lot of Buddhist ideas in Jesus. He's the same thing. Don't have desire for the things of this world. Alas, I've made I've made all things new. Right. When he makes you new, it's no longer a question of are you alive, as in are you a man upon the earth? Well, you might still technically be a man upon the earth, but you really aren't. You're really not of this world as you were. There has been a change. And so it's not surprising to see that familiar rituals and things we do in social networking and social interaction and things start to lose I won't say, they lose heaviness or they lose significance. to where you don't need this thing over here or that thing or approval from people or whatever to conduct your life, because the question of whether or not you should live has been removed. It's not. It's no longer part of the paradigm. Just like you're not a slave of the world system because you've been bought and paid for by the blood of Christ. That changes the paradigm, changes the legal status, changes the the status of being. And so, it would be like, well, is it okay for Christ to live? Well, that the question's irrelevant for Christ because he's eternal. So that's irrelevant. So now we get to this state where there's been this disconnect. So I'm not surprised that you disconnect from the things that you used to hold so dear, or how they fall away bit by bit, as you mature. I mean, even things I used to do, like even years ago, where I would be on there was a site called SoundClick where we'd share music. It was like the first social network for music. We'd share music, and then it was like, you want people to like it, but there was never, for me, a follow through because it wasn't what was driving me. What other musicians would say based on getting me to go say something about their thing or whatever. This sort of mutual appreciation society to try to get us through. It was all about getting these musicians through. There'd be people that would drop by in Icon Positions, for example, that would have like a record deal, and they would, and they'd want to try out songs there to see what people thought. And everyone would just rave on them, and they were so awesome, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't see how that's going to help a guy. But it was that sort of, you could see these people in their own kind of, in that milieu. The same thing in writers' groups where people would, desperate. We would go to these writers, me included, would go to these writers groups, and while I'm waiting for my novel deal to come through, while I'm writing these novels, which some were pretty good actually. I wish still if they're around. My daughter will have to do something with them after I'm gone, but or not, or throw them out or burn them, and I could care less. But we'd go, and I would be desperate to read our pages. So, and I was in one writers group that was sponsored by Bantam Books, with a Bantam book editor in there who was like looking for material, obviously, to publish. And she sort of preferred, she was looking for romance material, whatever. I come in with my heavy sort of, Thomas Pynchon influenced stuff and cyberpunk stuff and weird kind of spacey, kind of weird other realities. And there's a whole subculture of this kind of literary world, which I think I have a book now that I'm looking at. That it kind of goes from comic books to heavy-duty literature. It's all kind of under one roof of extreme intellectuals who are kind of dropouts from society that kind of have this underground thing going. And none of that was involved in this particular writing group. I mean, I was trying to write something more or less commercial, kind of a thriller. But I had those tendencies to try to go into, and I was being pulled back by the group to not delve so much into the psychological stuff, but just kind of plot it through, which is fine. But we would get there and we would read our pages, and then everyone would, appreciate. And if there was criticism, it was very, kind of constructive and very mild, but it was more or less, a place people wanted to go to be liked. That was my first social network, was a novel writing workshop. Just like there was another one for screenwriting that was sponsored by MGM of all places. And the woman in there was just a nut, I mean, she's passed on now, but that was just the same kind of thing, It was just, it was, what cost to be liked? Why did we want to be liked so much? Why did we want to write and then go to these, workshops and meetings and seminars and things, so that we could read stuff, or that actors could read our material and then act it out, and then we would, applaud. All these almost alternatives to not getting that deal to pull us through, so we don't have to ask the question, is it okay to be alive? No, because I'm suffering. So I want people to like me, so I'm going to write this up and I'm going to go down there and get them to, and we'll read it, and then we'll see what happens. But I need to go through that because that's going to pull me through. And on the way, I've got to listen to this music. I got to have this certain music. I got to have this certain car. I got to have this thing I'm wearing, and I want them to like me. I want to make sure I look good, and there I am, and I've got a chance like everybody else. Here I am on the MGM lot. I mean, or whatever lot we were on. I think it was in Culver City somewhere. Wasn't MGM, but it was another studio. Anyway, the why I put up with it was that there's a place to go for some kind of approval, and in a world that was very, being if you're in the arts or an artist, and you're working and you've got these, times of loneliness, and you're struggling, and you're working with your art, nobody cares, and you deal with all that. You people out there, you deal with it, and it propels you on. But what you're really experiencing, if I may, is you're experiencing this question that's plaguing us. Is it okay to be alive? No, I feel kind of lousy. It's not okay to be alive. No, I feel depressed. I want to blow my brains out. It's not okay to be. No, I'm living here in Sherman Oaks, and I feel like, I put all this house together and this like plastic wife together and this plastic life together, and it's just all a sham. It's all a lie. And I'm trying to write, hoping that maybe I'll be discovered so that by Jove I can, make sense out of it, so that can then have significance, so that yes, it's okay to be alive, so that yes, I feel good, yes, I have relief, yes, it's not this crazy menagerie of craziness and intellectualism, which then became like some sort of, for me, intellectualism became rather a life raft in a doomed sea, and so. Just to think about that. So there was that whole thing that went on for years. That whole thing, and then there were deals made eventually here and there. But I mean, it was just so desperate. What was the thing driving it? To be someone significant, to not be a loser, to not be forgotten about, to have some significance, to answer the question in the affirmative. Yes, it's okay to be alive, and this is the reason why. And I've worked hard to get to this. Meanwhile, we are all desperately insecure because that question's plaguing us. So we go to these workshops, and it can be just as, you actors out there, acting workshops, or, social media now for, there used to be, music kind of came into the social networking thing. If you're not social networking, but like almost a workshop environment where, people give these encouraging words, and they're trying to get each other to like their stuff because we need to be liked, because we there's some thing there that we have to, because that question keeps popping up. And I never had much follow through with the music, since Christ. I didn't really do a good job with marketing anything. I did podcast music, nothing. I didn't really participate that much. I tried 4 different social networks to share and like other people, and they liked me, and I did that, and I just never really fit into that model, and so I tended to put it down. And I know there's other people I know that like it, and I don't want to put you down out there. I just have my own opinion as to why I would, I thought, it's an old tape, that I need to have significant. We're taught when we're children, we got to go after the rabbit, run after the rabbit and get it, because see, we have to get away from that question. Is it okay to be alive? You see. And of course, because the answer is no, that's a horrifying thing for the human race to discover about itself. The answer is, of course, no. Hell no. It's not okay to be alive. It's not only not okay, it's immoral to be alive, considering the suffering and the ridiculousness of this situation. And we don't want to answer that. So we're craving significance. We're craving people to. I mean, I'm familiar more with the art world, literary and music and things. So I'm more akin to that, begging for people to like you and begging for them to pay attention and begging for them. You should have seen how it was with me trying to write poetry, because I wrote for a lot of years when I was a kid, and I had like, people like Rod Serling want to meet me. I had some, some ends here and there, but I blew them all, naturally, being a lamb. Yeah, there's a lot of potential, you might say. But anyway, of course, that's why you listen, right? Had I been any different, you absolutely tune out. I mean, you'd want nothing to, because then I would become a professional liar, and I couldn't help you or me or anybody. But yeah, there was nothing new there. There was always a thing, and then I kind of developed this Christ, removes that, and I sort of developed this, kind of devil may care attitude, about things. And then I started, and I still haven't completely, I'm still not quite mature in that. But that is a very healthy thing, because what it means is the question, is it okay to be alive, has been dealt with. It has been TKO'd. Does not exist. What is life is just Christ. And, so in that mode, and I'm examining myself over the last, say, 14, 15 years, when coming out of the literary thing and then needing people to, and then I got to the point where I didn't care what they thought. And then that really helped with poetry, music, whatever. It helped not caring, I went through periods where I tried to, not have the loneliness, therefore social networks with the music, but then I realized that it was in the wrong place for me. And because it was just a redo of everything else, but why it was a mistake for me, it's because that's no longer an issue about the question of whether or not it's okay to be alive, right? So now, I put things out, I don't know who likes, who does, there's nothing coming back to me. That was a good podcast, Z. I don't even know what podcast you're talking about. There's this disconnect from the work, which is very much like being in the angelic realm. In the angelic realm, there is only now, now, and now, and now. Whatever you just did was no longer there. And I feel myself going more further into that as time goes on. And I think it's a good thing. But so what was life? Well, life was trying to find a certain thing, but it wasn't until I died to self, really, and I've died a few times, you know what I mean, and maybe I just didn't get it, maybe I was just too hard-headed, but when I died in this last time around, 15 years ago, it seemed I stayed down, I didn't get up, and it took away all that desperate, insignificant feeling of needing to quash that question with a like and approval, someone saying I'm okay. Really, in the end, I just was so hurt. I just desperately needed someone to say, "Hey, it's okay, Zeph. You're okay. You're all right. You've done nothing wrong. Don't worry." And so I was a head case. I was a messed up person, and so I never really worked very hard at getting the likes, and I mean, from time to time I did, and I got them, but then I never really followed through, because it's an abstraction. It's just like when I turned Rush on, one of my favorite people to see in concert, killing it in this concert, nothing, turn the debates on, nothing there either. I turn this on, I go do this, I accomplish something with my mixing, I don't care. Or the podcast, someone says very good, it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's all so abstract, but it got that way over time, because the question, it's almost like we need the question, is it okay to be alive? We need that question, is it okay to be alive? In order to propel us to be alive. And in so doing, we need, to struggle for the approval of others. We need to struggle to accomplish something in the world. We need to struggle to be of service to, say, other people. But all of these ultimately fail because the question persists. None of these things get rid of the question. Only the death of self can actually rid us of this question. And in ridding us of the question, then it doesn't have to be answered. Is it okay to be alive? It's an irrelevant question to ask me now. Not irrelevant 15 years ago. Is it okay to be alive? Of course not. I was, my existential nihilism was just evidence of a really screwed up, pessimistic view of pretty much all things, even though I had things and privilege and this, that. To me, it was all just darkness. It was not really appreciated because the overarching question of is it okay to be alive was already answered. No, it's not okay to be alive. So it's like, there were people that were very successful I knew and they would commit suicide. They said, well, why? They had everything going for them. No, they had one thing not going for them. They had answered the question. No, it's not okay to be alive, and I'm not going to keep trying to give my life significance anymore. I'm done. I'm checking out. Now, that's not a normal human instinct to check out, and of course, it's not recommended. We've dealt with that. No, we're hardwired to look for an answer to this. No, it's not okay to be alive. We want to make it okay to be alive. We want to make it okay, but we can't. And we get tireder and tireder and tireder as we go further and further and further. And we become sadder and sadder and bitter sometimes. And, I'm just here to say, celebration of Jesus Christ. I mean, I laid my life down to God, and God took me, and he showed me the sun and showed me this and that, and put a Bible in my hand, and there was, and over years, you watch these things falling away, like this need to be. It's like when there's no more need to be liked, because I get a lot of hatred as well, but when there's no more need to be liked, there was a freedom in that because it wasn't about me. There was no me to be approved of, to be furthering, to have to go to a workshop and be the star of the workshop so people would like me. How many of you have gone to a painting or a photography workshop or a writing workshop where you're going to share your work and then, you want that approval, so it keeps drawing you back there. You're not even sure why you're doing it, but there's something that's making you feel like there is a possibility you could do something with your art. And why do you do that? Because you want your life to be validated. You want the question answered in the affirmative. It's okay to be alive. And you need that approval, we put ourselves in situations where we can get plaques on the wall, or we achieve something in sports, we achieve something in sports, and we get a ribbon, and when we're little kids, when we go to school, or if you go to camp or something like that, you get a little ribbon and you get a thing, and you get that approval. All these things are designed to get us to avoid the question. The intellectuals go after the questions of, like, what is the ontological heaviness of being? What is this? Why? And of course, a big aspect of philosophy, of the discipline of philosophy, is dedicated just to this ontological question. What is life, and what is it about? What is it for? And we get glib responses from churches like, well, it's a blessing to be alive, and we're here to serve one another. And it's like, no, that just doesn't solve the problem, because the question still remains. So that's why I never went to church, because they would give these, again, glib answers to life's very precious, important, problems, if you will, or challenges. Equations. And my giving myself to God was a voluntary act of, I just was out of options. And then, the fact that there was a response and, and all that, it still takes a long time to understand, you've died here. You're dead. You can keep trying to stroke the ego and try to get back to what you had, but you see how it all falls away. Because the question is no longer relevant, because now you're in Christ, you're in this other realm, you're in this other dimension. You may physically be here, but your life automatically has positive significance because you're the Son of God. You are Christ. You are the I am. You are, you are, this is the ultimate in approval, if you will. And that goes for most of you who listen. But it's not an experience that I can really relate too much to other people, because you see, most people haven't had that experience, or at least the ones I've run into. They seem to be on the way to it, or something blocks it. I'm not sure what blocks it, but it's the fruit of it, the evidence of it, is this kind of realigning of what may be important or not. There's this kind of ontological, which means the study of being, ontological, the study of being. It's a philosophical discipline. And it's like, well, we're in Christ, no problem. It's all good in Yeshua. That's right, it's all good in Yeshua, no, why worry? Everything's fine. Everything's great. All good in Yeshua. I got to shrink so he can grow. And all these cliches people throw around while they're acting like everybody that you all knew growing up, and just like the old world. And you're wondering why that confusion exists here of these sort of fakers. And I have something to say about this a little bit later. I don't have a lot of time right now, but I just want to share these thoughts with you. And this question of, is it okay to be alive? Which is this book, The Conspiracy Against the Human Race, by Thomas Ligotti. Nice, challenges me. But then you see it made me now go ahead and just tear it up in a sense, because here I am, bull in the china shop, wrecking his thesis, butchering whatever he wrote in the book. But it's a question that I have answered in of course it's not okay. And I've had that sort of negative view of it for all my life, despite having every reason to be fulfilled, every reason to thrive. And yet the opposite occurred, in a sense, the nihilism, the negativity, the bleak outlook, the troubled child, the black sheep, the dark intellectual, the moody poet, or the morose poet, if you will. And not anything I saw. It was just like I'm just looking back and seeing how there was this thing. A lot of people thought, well, it's because there was troubles, and when you sat there, you were quiet, and you were quiet, you were alone. You say, is it okay to be alive? And the answer comes back, no, of course not. How do you feel right now? Do you feel okay? No, I don't feel okay. How about a couple of years later? Do you feel okay now? Is it okay to be alive? No, it's not okay. I've got to keep searching for an answer. I don't feel like the other kids. I'm not sure what's going on here. Now, when I look up to the other kids, of course, they're very busy with their activities, and they feel a sense of purpose, a sense of direction, a sense of belonging, I suppose you could say, a sense of purpose within the the sociological structure, and a sense of that they don't question further than that. But what being is, what suffering is, because we know that all life is suffering. So somehow they're avoiding it. I'm watching them, and they're busy, and we get very, very busy. It's all busy work, Because the busier we are, the more that question goes into the background. It doesn't get answered because every single human being would answer the same way, if totally, completely honest. Not these glib responses of, life's a blessing. Hell is really a lot worse than this. Cheer up, Z. It's like, I'm not unhappy. I'm just looking, I'm in a horror movie, you're in a comedy. The horror movie is objective, not my own projection. And the comedy you're in is your delusion, which I may envy tremendously. But here we are. It's all breaking down now, of course, in our society. But let's get back to this idea. It's not okay to be alive. And this is the big, deep, dark secret of the earth. This is the big conspiracy. And we do everything in our power to find some reason, because we're wired to find a solution. But the solution ultimately is death. The only thing that cures that problem is death. But we're not wired to kill ourselves. That's too pessimistic a thing. That's beyond any kind of logic as well. So we push on, but we must die anyway. And we are offered two deaths. One is a death to self. That's a initiation, if you will. That in the case of Christ is conducted by God's kingdom, and you're there and you participate, but there's no one that's actually, it's something that happens within you. It happens in another realm. But yes, there's that. And then there's physical death, which then the question ends because you're no longer alive. Either way, the question, it's going to be dealt with. In Christ, what happens is he lives. We don't. Question removed. When you're dead in Satan, you're the dead as well. The dead will rise in Christ, but the dead in Satan will fall. But still, they're there physically, but they're dead. In other words, it's that free will choice has been answered, and they've been initiated, indoctrinated. And the reason that they pushed for it was because they needed to achieve, to belong, or to live. And the only way they could live would be to die so that they could live. And it's funny how Christ and Satan have like a mirror image of each other in terms of everything is counterfeit, or on Satan's side, but it's all a mirror image of counterfeit. It's like a perfect opposite. But each way, whether you were initiated into Satanism or you're initiated into Jesus Christ, it doesn't matter, because each thing is essentially the same, from the same cause and effect. In other words, the cause is this overarching question has brought us to our knees, and we give up because we just can't go any further. And then one way or another, it gets dealt with. Okay. All right. So I'm getting the call here, and apparently it's time for dinner. So the thing I was trying to say is that it's awfully great being in Christ and having that as my life, or my breath, or I can't even explain what it is, because I'm not really completely here. That question doesn't apply. The slavery of the world doesn't apply. Nothing really applies. So therefore, the things that were important, and look how cool that is, or look, I can't quite hold on to, because it's no longer necessary. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. And isn't that a wonderful thing to understand, that question of, is it okay to be alive? No. Being honest, right? No, it's not. Now suddenly becomes irrelevant. And whatever life is becomes more abstract, in the sense that, well, I don't know what it is. I look out the window, I see people running around, but I'm not sure what it is anymore, because it's like I die, Christ lives. So whatever it is, he'll guide me through. Whatever I'm supposed to want, he'll, whatever needs to be corrected, whatever patterns there were for wanting approval. I think we want approval basically because we want to be accepted, because we want to answer the question in the affirmative, and we just can't handle the actual truth. And that's my little treatise for today. I mean, that's as far as I've gotten. I don't have much more of a conclusion. I just noticed that as I go more avant-garde, sort of, for lack of a better term, that's an awful term, but with things in musical productions and sonic productions and things, getting back to, kind of where I was, or being more of a free spirit or whatever it is, it's kind of propelled by this idea of this profound idea that I don't have to answer the question of, is it okay to be alive? Thus, I don't need approval. I love people. I love to receive and give love. That's agape love. That's just one of the great gifts of the Spirit when you walk in the Lord. But this idea that we press on, when you remove that need of approval or attachment, desire attachment, desire approval for things we've done, whatever project it is you're doing, and then desire for these the things that will, the right dress for you ladies, that'll just make that day go right, or this, the right car for a dude, there's all these rituals. And I watch them, and I kind of go into the marketplace, and I see people without that sense of purpose. I used to be quite jealous, I must admit, I will confess. But now I watch almost with intrigue, not in a way of putting people down, really. It's more like intrigue, and I realize what's happening to me is God is pulling me, obviously toward death, but toward, leaving here. And it's interesting how things that were so important and tragic just seem to, it just isn't like that, And I know that people have a lot of hard feelings here and there, but I think I've sort of answered my, what I've noticed, well, like someone said, well, you have 30 views on this YouTube. I mean, don't you want to amplify that or try to? I'm like, no, I don't care if it's 5 or 0. How about less than? I'd love it if YouTube could go into the minus zone. Like you get minus 100 plays, or like on music, it's like, this isn't music, Zeph. I know it's not music. Well, why don't you give me minus 100 plays then? It's almost like I'm in that world. It's beautiful nihilism, but it's life eternal, but it's something else. It's hard to explain. But there's a freedom there. I think you're sensing that, There's a freedom there. And I can't cultivate it because it has to just happen, But there's a freedom there. Well, I'll take it. I'll take any kind of freedom. Real freedom, Freedom from, you want to go with me, right? When I did my song Up to the Stars, someone said, well, take me with you. Yeah. See, that's the thing. I mean, we're good to go. But just think, if you had all these attachments and desires and suffering, suffering awfully, needing. I knew people in the film business who were like, Academy Award winners and whatnot, and they just were desperate to get back there, to go to this party or to do this. They just, minute of every day of their lives was, they had a little phone thing on their ear, you know what I mean, and they would drive around in their Porsche or whatever, and it would be like this, I'm like, you're like a rat to me. This thing, I got to be here, and then I got to be there, and then I got to go to Shrink, and then I got to do that, and then there's a party tonight there, and then there's this here. And it's just, life is so great. I'm like, I look at it, I'm so, what exactly? How did you get that way? And I now know because it all started when we're kids. Is it okay to be alive? And that question, as terrifying as it is, and we know why it's terrifying. is what propels this whole thing, along with, of course, desire for the things we see in the world, and you know. But why the fame and fortune? Why that? Why being approved of? Why so much that? Are we social animals? Is that what it is? It's because we don't. Okay, I'm coming. We don't want to address the question, and we will do anything in our secular lives. Funny though, the thing is dead in Christ. It's also somewhat. Well, no, it's not dead in Satan, because the people I know that are in Satan, they crave approval. They crave, yachts and helicopters and things and planes. So it's yeah, you know. Well, anyway, I thought I'd share that with you, and I don't know what else to say about it. It's something a little different here at the Zeph Report, and I suppose it's because every birthday is kind of like, makes me think about all this stuff. And God bless you, each and every